The film opens with a massive demonstration taking place in the streets. The crowd is demanding the release of a man named Ronal, who is accused of violating their country's laws. However, to the ordinary people marching in the streets, Ronal is nothing short of a god, a savior who has always stood by them. Soon after, Ronal is escorted out of prison. The moment the crowd lays eyes on him, the demonstrators fall silent, their voices momentarily stilled. The scene shifts to the past, to the year 1985 in Ronapura. At that time, a water tanker suddenly overturns on the barren land. A middle-aged man notices it and quickly approaches. Realizing the tanker is filled with water, he runs back to alert the villagers, paying no mind to the people inside the vehicle. Before long, a crowd of villagers rushes in, carrying containers of all shapes and sizes, lining up to collect the precious water from the tanker. The driver of the tanker can only watch helplessly as the villagers take the water meant for someone else. Once they've gathered what they need, the villagers return to their homes, their containers now full. Meanwhile, a young Ronal walks into a police station, clutching a piece of paper. It's a petition pleading for clean water for his village. But no one in the station pays him any attention. Frustrated and disheartened, Ronal turns to his father for comfort. His father reassures him, saying that the government will eventually provide water for their village. But Ronal is not willing to wait. In a desperate act, Ronal locks the gates of the police station, trapping the officers inside. He declares that no one will leave until they sign his petitions, the same ones he's been handing out for months. Suddenly, one officer realizes that Ronal is planning something even more drastic, but it's too late. Moments later, a massive explosion rocks the station. It was revealed that Ronal had planted a bomb at the entrance of the police chief's office, driven by anger and frustration over the repeated neglect of his village's pleas. The explosion claims the lives of several officers. As a result, Ronal is put on trial for his actions. In the courtroom, Ronal boldly speaks the truth about the struggles his village faces, laying bare the injustice they endure. The judge feels sympathy for Ronal and his village, but the severity of his crime cannot be overlooked. Many lives were lost in the explosion, and for that, Ronal is sentenced to 21 years in prison. His father and younger sister can only watch in silent sorrow as Ronal is taken away to a juvenile detention center. Later in prison, Ronal dedicates himself to learning. He spends every available moment reading every book in the prison library. Meanwhile, back in his village, Ronapura, vast deposits of iron are discovered. With this discovery, large-scale mining operations begin, stripping the land of what little life it had left and pushing the village further into drought. Years pass, but Ronal remains steadfast in his pursuit of knowledge. His good behavior earns him the respect of the prison staff, who often give him decent clothes to wear. One officer even gives him a suit, the kind worn by lawyers, believing that Ronal has the potential to become a great advocate for justice. When Ronal is finally released from prison, he wears that very suit. He is immediately offered a job by the family of a former fellow inmate. Now free, Ronal dedicates his life to helping those who struggle to find justice. Upon returning home, Ronal is warmly welcomed by his sister and father. That night, his father shares news of his sister Vedavathi's upcoming marriage to Jayful. He seeks Ranagul's approval, and without hesitation, Ronal gives his blessing, supporting his sister's happiness wholeheartedly. In the village, Ronal used the knowledge he had gained in prison to help ordinary people fight for justice. Remarkably, he never charged a single fee for his services. Many villagers, desperate for help, turned to him without hesitation, and many of them won their cases. Word of Ranagul's kindness and skill spread quickly, drawing curious onlookers to his humble abode. Among them was Vaishali, a beautiful and compassionate doctor, who was so moved by Ranagul's selflessness that she decided to set up her practice in his village. One day, Ronal received a visitor, a man named Faradim, who had worked at Paran Steel for 21 years. Faradim came with a heavy heart, sharing the grim realities of life at the factory. There were no bonuses, no health insurance, and the workers were treated with utter disregard. Just days earlier, one of his colleagues had suffered a workplace accident, breaking his leg. After taking a 4-week leave to recover, the man returned to the factory only to be fired. Overwhelmed by despair, the man does the unthinkable. At that moment, Faradim also revealed that the workers were given housing that fell far short of what had been promised. When the workers protested, the owner of Paran Steel, Candre, tore up their demands. Those who resisted were forced to sign statements of compliance, and during one such signing, a worker's hand was brutally severed by Gatha, the factory's enforcer. All this time, Faradim had sought help from several lawyers, but none were willing to take on the case. Desperate, he turned to Ronal, pleading for his assistance. Ronal agreed without hesitation and instructed Faradim to gather signatures from other workers to build a stronger case against the factory's injustices. Faradim followed Ranagle's advice and even called in the police to oversee the signing process. However, Gatha swiftly intervened, pointing his sword at one of the inspectors and threatening to harm his family if he didn't back down. Just as tensions reached a boiling point, Faradim revealed that he had recorded all of Gatha's threats and crimes. Moments later, Ronal arrived, his presence alone enough to intimidate Gatha. The inspector wasted no time in handcuffing Gatha and taking him away. Under Ranagle's watchful eye, the workers began signing their statements of resistance, one by one. Candre, the factory manager, could do nothing to stop them, especially since Ronal now had concrete evidence of their wrongdoing. The workers' rebellion at Paran Steel led to Candre's removal from his position. He was replaced by Ronapura, a man known for his ruthlessness and willingness to exploit his workers. The employees, emboldened by their small victory, began speaking out, demanding justice. But Krana dismissed their pleas with cold indifference, arriving at the factory flanked by armed guards. When Candre reported the workers' defiance, Krana ordered his men to destroy the workers' homes and drive them out without mercy. Left with no choice, the workers fled the factory, their spirits crushed. On their journey, the company worker encountered Ronal, who listened to their plight and offered them refuge in his village. He set up temporary tents for them to stay in, providing what little comfort he could. Though they had lost everything, the workers were deeply grateful for Ranagle's kindness, which gave them a glimmer of hope in their darkest hour. Ronal took the case of Paran Steel to court, but the judicial system sided with the factory, absolving them of any wrongdoing. Undeterred, Ronal sought advice from other renowned lawyers, hoping to find a way to secure justice for the workers. Despite the legal setback, he continued to shelter the displaced workers in his village, refusing to abandon them. Elsewhere, Faradim found himself facing a new problem. He had decided to sell a piece of land he had saved for years, but when he went to the notary, he was told the land no longer belonged to him. The next day, other workers came forward with similar complaints, revealing a disturbing pattern. Ronal took the matter to court, uncovering those 150 plots of land belonging to the workers had been seized by Paran Steel without their knowledge. Shortly after, the judge summoned several workers, examining the land deeds they presented as evidence. However, Paran Steel's lawyer produced another set of documents, claiming the workers had signed away their rights. The lawyer blamed the workers for not reading the fine print. After reviewing the evidence, the judge sided with Paran Steel and ordered Ronal to stop aiding the workers. The ruling left Ronal deeply disheartened. Once again, he had lost to Paran Steel. But instead of giving up, he retreated to study where he had gone wrong. Determined to fight back, Ronal filed an appeal, which was accepted, leading to a new trial. This time, Ronal came prepared with stronger evidence. He brought forward witnesses who testified that Paran Steel had manipulated the workers into signing documents that effectively transferred their land back to the company. Ronal also exposed how Paran Steel had exploited Ronapura's resources for personal gain, showing no regard for the workers' well-being. After carefully considering the new evidence, the judge ruled in favor of the workers. The 610 hectares of land belonging to the 150 workers were to be returned to them, stripping Paran Steel of its ill-gotten gains. Hearing this, the workers erupted in joy, finally reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. They celebrated their victory at Ranagle's home, expressing their gratitude repeatedly and presenting him with hand-woven fabrics as tokens of their appreciation. Meanwhile, Krana, enraged by the verdict, confronted his lawyer. In a fit of fury, he killed the lawyer for failing to win the case against Ronal. Kandre, however, had a different plan. He informed Krana that Gata, who had been released from custody, was ready to seek revenge on Ronal. Not long after, Gata and his men stormed Ranagle's home, tearing down the fences and instilling fear in everyone. The workers, trembling in their tents, watched as Gata brandished a long-barreled weapon and began reading out a list of names, those who had dared to stand against Paran Steel. He demanded that the named individuals step forward, but no one moved. Gata then forced a worker's child to read the names aloud. Terrified, the child said the name Jairam. Gata called out the name again, and a man reluctantly stepped forward. Without hesitation, Gata attacked him mercilessly. The child, trembling, continued to read the names as Gata attacked each person called, showing no mercy. The workers could only watch in horror, their cries for mercy falling on deaf ears. Moments later, Gata seemed almost intoxicated by their pleas, laughing maniacally as he carried out his brutal rampage. By the time he was done, many had fallen victim, and the survivors were left in shock, unable to comprehend the cruelty they had just witnessed. When Ronal returned, he was met with a scene of utter devastation. Bodies of victims lay across his property, and the wails of grieving women filled the air. He saw one family brutally executed, a sight that shook him to his core. Ronal stood in silence, his heart heavy with grief and guilt. He had been too late to save them, and the weight of that failure bore down on him. After the massacre, Ronal organized a mass funeral for the victims of Gata's brutality. But Paran Steel was far from finished. They bribed the judge and everyone involved in the case to ensure victory, as they filed an appeal to reclaim the land. Ronal, unable to gather witnesses in time, lost the case once again. The land was handed back to Paran Steel, and within days, Gata and his men erected fences around the property, marking their dominance. When Ronal heard the news, he picked up a piece of iron and left his home without a word. Everyone watched as he walked away, their eyes widening in shock when they saw him forge the iron into a long, gleaming sword. Ronal then ordered Lion, his loyal companion, to place a chair in the middle of the contested land. As Ronal approached with his sword in hand, Gata showed no fear. Instead, he smirked and ordered his men to arm themselves and attack. But Ronal moved with lightning speed, attack every man who stood in his way. His anger burned uncontrollably, and within moments, Gata's men lay lifeless on the ground. Gata, now furious, drew his own sword and charged at Ronal. But Ronal was unstoppable. With precise strikes, he brought Gata to his knees, and with one final blow, he ended Gata's life. At that moment, one of Gata's surviving men, trembling with fear, fled the scene, terrified of becoming Ranagle's next target. When Paran Steel's reinforcements arrived, they hesitated, intimidated by Ranagle's wrath. Calmly, Ronal sat down on the chair he had placed earlier and declared that the land belongs to the workers, not Paran Steel. Word of Ranagle's victory reached Kandre and Krana, leaving them speechless. They were powerless against Ranagle's resolve, and Krana seethed with hatred, vowing to destroy Ronal once and for all. In a desperate move, Krana gathered the CEOs of all major banks and pressured them to refuse any land sales initiated by Ronal. His plan worked. No bank would accept Ranagle's transactions. Undeterred, Ronal marched to the government offices. However, one of the clerks, who remembered Ranagle's fiery temper from his childhood, panicked and fled, urging his colleagues to do the same. Frustrated by the bureaucracy, Ronal resorted to force, demanding that his petition be processed immediately. After signing the necessary documents, he left the office, ensuring his request would reach the Prime Minister's desk. Reluctantly, the government officials forwarded the paperwork, and eventually, Ronal secured legal permission to sell portions of the land. With the government's approval, Ronal established an iron or mining operation on the reclaimed land. He rehired the displaced workers, ensuring they were treated fairly and given the rights they deserved. Krana and Kandre were furious when they learned that Ronal had taken control of the land that had made them wealthy for years. They knew the area contained the finest iron ore deposits, and losing it was a devastating blow. Meanwhile, Ronal, once known for his patience and calm demeanor, had transformed into a ruthless and cold-blooded leader. Under his management, the factory flourished, and he built hospitals, schools, and other public facilities for the workers and the surrounding community. At the same time, Kandre couldn't bear to see Ronal's success. He reported Ronal's actions to the police, urging them to stop him at all costs. Amid Ronal's triumphs, his sister Vedavati, who was heavily pregnant, returned to India with her husband Jayful. Apparently, Jayful wanted to start a healthcare business, and Ronal supported their decision, even helping them settle in. However, Ronal's drastic change in behavior troubled Vaishali, the compassionate doctor who had admired his earlier self. When she confronted him, Ronal dismissed her concerns, stating that his new approach was the only way to ensure the happiness and prosperity of those around him. Meanwhile, Krana had planted a spy among Ronal's men to gather information. The spy reported that Lion, one of Ronal's trusted aides, was transporting large sums of money. Acting on this tip, the police inspector followed Lion's truck, armed and ready to intervene. They stormed Ronal's property and demanded that the truck's contents, a load of sand, be dumped onto the ground. Ronal watched silently from his chair as the officers inspected the sand. Calmly, Ronal approached the inspector, scooped up a handful of sand, and explained that it contained 75% iron ore. He even offered to sell it to the officers at a special price. The inspector, realizing he had been misled by Krana's false report, grew frustrated. He vowed to find a way to send Ronal back to prison. Undeterred, Kandre and Krana hatched another plan. This time, they approached the Prime Minister of India, offering to clear his debts in exchange for his help in bringing down Ronal. However, the Prime Minister refused their offer, revealing that he had already sold his assets to Ronal to settle his debts. As proof, he showed them a truck filled with cash. Enraged by this setback, Krana grew even more determined to destroy Ronal. Over time, Ronal's mining operations expanded, amassing immense wealth and reaching international markets. But then, a shocking incident occurred. The Prime Minister was found dead near Ronal's mining site. The police immediately descended on Ronal's home to arrest him. When they discovered he wasn't there, they took Vedavati instead, dragging her to the police station. At the station, Vedavati was denied even the basic courtesy of sitting down, and sweat dripped from her body as she stood in distress. When one officer tried to intervene and allow her to sit, the inspector struck him down, showing no mercy. Meanwhile, Ronal finally received word that his heavily pregnant sister, Vedavati, had been taken to the police station. Without hesitation, he rushed there. When he saw the mistreatment she was enduring, Ronal grabbed a chair and gently helped her sit down. Ronal then confronted the inspector, who immediately accused him of being involved in the Prime Minister's death at the mining site. But Ronal had come prepared. With his lawyer by his side, he secured his release on bail. The inspector, seething with anger, vowed to imprison Ronal no matter what it took. However, Ronal responded to the inspector's threats with brutal retaliation. He doused the police station in gasoline and set it ablaze, reducing the building and everything inside to ashes. Those inside could do nothing to stop the inferno. As the flames consumed the station, Ronal calmly drove away, leaving behind nothing but ruins. Determined to protect his sister, Ronal decided to relocate to a safer place. He entrusted her security to Lion, who stood guard outside their new home, ready to defend them at all costs. Not long after, Kandre woke up to a shocking sight. Ronal was standing in his bedroom. Similarly, Krana was stunned when Ronal's private helicopter landed at his office. In response, Krana quickly mobilized his armed guards to stop Ronal, but within moments, Ronal's men overpowered them. Krana trembled in fear, especially when he saw Ronal holding Kandre's severed eye. Ronal declared that he wanted to end their feud once and for all, demanding that they cease their evil deeds in Ronapura. But peace was short-lived. A new crisis emerged as Ronal's hospital became overwhelmed with critically ill patients. Many of them couldn't be saved and died within its walls. The influx of patients far exceeded the hospital's capacity, leaving the staff exhausted and helpless. Unbeknownst to Ronal, someone had orchestrated this disaster, carefully covering their tracks to avoid suspicion. They even instructed the hospital staff to act normally, ensuring that no one would suspect foul play. The next day, Vaishali approached Ronal and revealed the truth behind the hospital's crisis. She explained that the medications being administered had incorrect dosages, and some were expired. Determined to uncover the mastermind, Ronal tracked down the corrupt doctor responsible and forced him to reveal his accomplice. To his shock, the mastermind was none other than Faradim, who had grown envious of Ranagul's success. Faradim, working under Jaifel's direction, had plotted to destroy Ronal. Ronal was devastated. He had helped Faradim from the beginning, only to be betrayed in the worst way. Without wasting another moment, Ronal handed Lion a weapon, and Lion swiftly ended Faradim's life. Soon after, they burned Faradim's body on the spot, igniting a massive fire at the pharmaceutical facility he had operated under Jaifel's command. Realizing that Jaifel was the true architect of this evil scheme, Ronal was consumed by rage. Not long after, Ronal intercepted Jaifel on his way to a meeting, confronting him about his greed and the atrocities he had committed. Apparently, Jaifel had been producing counterfeit drugs with incorrect dosages and repackaging expired medications, leading to countless deaths in Ronapura. Upon hearing Ranagul's accusations, Jaifel laughed coldly, admitting that his sole purpose in coming to India was to enrich himself through his pharmaceutical business, no matter the cost. Enraged, Ronal struck Jaifel with his sword, ending his life in a swift, decisive blow. Afterward, Ronal went to Vedavathi and made her promise never to leave him, no matter what. He then told her that Jaifel would never return. Vedavathi, noticing the blood on Ranagul's hands, broke into tears, her cries mingling with the pain of her impending labor. Ronal rushed her to the hospital, where she safely gave birth. However, Vedavathi refused to look at Ronal, her heart heavy with grief and betrayal. Meanwhile, Vaishali, who had always loved Ronal, found herself at odds with her father. He disapproved of her feelings, knowing all too well the ruthless reputation Ronal had earned. On the other side, Krana approached a high-ranking official named Sabari, who had recently risen to power as the president of a political party. Krana reminded Sabari of his promise to make Krana's younger brother the prime minister, presenting him with lavish gifts to secure his loyalty. Krana's only request was that Sabari help him eliminate Ronal. The sight of the money and gifts brought a smile to Sabari's face, and he assured Krana that Ronal would be dealt with. Sabari then called in favors from all the influential figures he could, bribing them to support his plan. Sabari's and Krana's schemes soon came to light. Sabari's men stormed Ranagul's factory, sealing it shut without explanation, leaving the workers confused and desperate. Ronal, upon learning of this, remained calm, strategizing his next move. He soon realized that Sabari and Krana had joined forces to destroy him. Krana, meanwhile, was overjoyed at the success of their plan. But Ronal was always one step ahead. In an unexpected turn of events, he managed to reclaim his seized assets by striking a deal with Kambandri, the new prime minister, who held authority over both Sabari and Krana. When Krana heard the news, he was stunned, as he had underestimated Ranagul's cunning and resourcefulness. Sabari and Krana were left seething with frustration. Ranagul's factory and mining operations resumed, much to the delight of the workers, who were grateful to have their jobs back. Vaishali, upon hearing the news, remained silent. Deep down, she missed the Ronal she had once known, the kind and compassionate man he used to be. Summoning her courage, she decided to visit Ronal at his home, bringing him a book she hoped would remind him of his former self and inspire him to change his ways. After Vaishali left, Ronal picked up the book and began to read. Meanwhile, Krana refused to accept defeat. Despite his closest advisor urging him to abandon his quest to reclaim the mines, Krana dismissed the advice and killed the man in a fit of rage. Declaring it a poor suggestion, Krana was willing to risk everything, even his own life, to take back Ronapura. In a bold and reckless move, Krana openly declared war on Ronal, launching a brutal attack on the mines. Krana showed no mercy, killing anyone in his path, including Ranal's father, who happened to be at the site. Ronal could no longer bear to see innocent lives lost. Determined to end the bloodshed, he swiftly organized a resistance and confronted Krana's forces head-on. Despite being outnumbered, Ronal moved with precision and ferocity, dismantling Krana's army in no time. Finally, Ronal came face-to-face with Krana, who stood ready with a long-barreled weapon. Krana pulled the trigger, the shot hitting a nearby car and causing an explosion that sent Ranal's body flying. Thinking he had the upper hand, Krana ordered his remaining men to finish Ronal off. But Ronal, though injured, summoned his strength and fought back with relentless determination, taking down each attacker one by one until only Krana remained. Seeing his men fall, Krana charged at Ronal with his bare hands. Ronal met him head-on, and the two engaged in a brutal, evenly matched fight. Krana raved about reclaiming Ronapura from Ranal's grasp, but Ronal refused to entertain his delusions. With a final, powerful strike, Ronal overpowered Krana, stabbing him and hurling his body onto a nearby metal spike. As Krana lay defeated, Ronal declared firmly that Ronapura will never belong to anyone but its people. However, the danger did not end there. Sabari, still consumed by hatred and vengeance, began plotting his next move. He enlisted Krana's younger brother to carry out his plans, determined to destroy Ronal once and for all. Moral lesson from the story: if you fight injustice with a sword, you might win the land but lose your sister's respect, so maybe try a lawyer's suit first. Also, if someone offers you expired medicine, it's probably not a good business deal, even if they're family.